All right, so we are going to look at reviewing factoring. This is from Algebra 1, so it might take a few tries to kind of remind yourself, but I promise you've learned this before. When we are factoring, an important thing to remember is your entire equation needs to be on one side of the equal sign, and the whole thing needs to be equal to zero. So if it's mixed up, if it looks like this one down here, everything needs to be moved to the same side of the equal sign. So our first example is already set up like that, so we don't have to do that. Just a reminder of what our goal is. When it's set equal to zero, our goal is to find the values of x that make it equal to zero. So our first step would be to find out or to break it down into two binomials. So it's going to say x and either plus and minus a number. Um, that plus and minus is going to depend on each problem that you're working on. You're going to be looking at the signs here and here, and that will help you decide, oh, is it going to be negative? Is it going to be positive? Um, and as we practice, you'll see a few different ways we're going to go about doing that. So when we're factoring, we're going to have to find numbers that add to equal to and multiply to equal -8. So I set up kind of a little list of factors as I'm first going through this until I'm comfortable. And so add to equal 2 and multiply to equal -8. So factors, so things that multiply to be -8, you've got -1 and 8. If we add them together, that gives us 7. That doesn't work, even though they multiply to be -8. So what about -8 and 1? Well, we add those together, that gives us -7, and we still have a -8. So we're going in the right direction, but we're going to maybe need to think about smaller numbers so that when they add together, they're going to be 2. So other numbers that multiply to be 8 are 4 and 2. So let's try -2 and 4. So 4 plus -2 is going to give us a +2, and they multiply together to be -8. So that looks like we have a good match to work with. So we are going to break our trinomial down into two binomials. It's going to say x -2 and x plus 4, as those are the numbers that are factors that work for everything we're trying to do. And then I'm going to set each one of these separately equal to 0. So I'm going to have x -2 equals 0 and x plus 4 equals 0. And then we're going to solve for x. So x -2 equals 0, x plus 4 equals 0, x equals 2, and x equals -4. So my answer, my factors are -4 and 2. Final answer. So let's try another. There is a small typo on this one. I apologize. So just cross out that 4 and make it a 5. And we're going to do the same exact things, but first we need this all to be on one side of the equal sign. So we are going to subtract our 5x and add our 6 to this side over here. These are going to cancel out and be left with 0 on one side. And we're going to have x squared minus 5x plus 6 equals 0. So again, we're going to come up with our factors, and they must add together to equal -5 and multiply to equal 6. So if they add together to equal a positive number, if they multiply together to equal a positive number, then they need to have the same signs. So they're either both going to be positive or both going to be negative. So if we look at two positive numbers, like 1 and 6, 1 plus 6 is 7, but they multiply to be 6. Well, that doesn't work. So let's try -1 and -6. Those add together to be -7, but still multiply together to be a +6. So that doesn't quite work either. So we might think about other factors of 6 like 3 and 2. 3 plus 2 is 5, so somewhat closer, and 3 times 2 is 6. So what if we made those negative? We've got -3 and -2. negative 3 plus negative 2 is negative 5. And negative 3 times negative 2 is a positive 6. There we go. We have our factors. So again, we are going to break this down into two binomials and set it equal to 0. So that gives me x minus 3 and x minus 2. We break this down into x minus 3 equals 0 and x minus 2 equals 0. Therefore, x is equal to 3 and x is equal to 2. So my factors for x are 2 and 3. All right, let's do one more. All right, we have x squared minus 4x minus 21. Since this is negative, we're going to have one positive and one negative. So when you're thinking of factoring this out, we're going to have x minus a number and x plus a number. So factors, they're going to add, add to equal negative 4 and multiply to equal negative 21. So 21, obviously I don't think 1 and 21 will work because those are not going to add together to be 4. So I'm just going to skip those. So other factors of 21 are 7 and 3. So let's try a negative 3 and a positive 7. 7 plus negative 3 is going to give me positive 4, but it does multiply to be negative 21. So how about I switch those signs? We get negative 7 and 3. That gives us negative 4 when we add them, and negative 21 when we multiply. So there are our factors. So we take x minus 7 and x plus 4 equals 0. Break that down. X minus 7 is 0. X plus 4 is equal to 0. X is 7. X is negative 4. So my final answer is 7 and negative 4.